have largely been peaceful. The information from organizers to those that have been participating today, telling people to de-escalate any sort of situation that pops up, because they don't want this to get out of the hand, and they do want this to be a peaceful assembly.
Because I think that takes the message away from it when it doesn't become that. Joining us now, I think we want to go to Ford O'Connell, a Southwest Florida-based businessman, lawyer, and political communications expert.
He's a former Republican congressional candidate, a longtime GOP campaign operative, and a political analyst who has appeared on outlets including Fox News, Fox Business, Newsmax, and News Nation as well. Mr. Ford, thank you so much for being here. So let's get started with the big picture. There are a lot of concerns about the positioning of the Trump administration and its policies. Clearly, we have thousands of people spread throughout the country that are protesting in opposition. Set the scene for us right now. Is the Trump administration on the right course?
Well, right now, I would say that if the midterms were held today, the Democrats would probably retake Congress. I do think the point of the rallies, though, this idea of no kings, I think that honestly, these are Trump derangement therapy sessions for a lot of base liberals. And what they're pushing are lies and not any facts whatsoever. They'll say things like this is an illegal war or ICE is a rogue operation. All of it is a lie, but it is firing up the Democrat base.
I mean, I think you can't ignore the amount of people that have shown up so far, at some of these protests. What do you say, and what does it tell you about the political landscape that we're dealing with right now? And we had asked a previous guest, too, is there any room for common ground at this point?
Well, it doesn't seem to be that there is any room for common ground, because essentially we're talking about a government shutdown right now that the Democrats have decided that because they want to abolish ICE, they're going to hurt TSA workers. Look, if Donald Trump were truly a king, there wouldn't be a shutdown and these protests wouldn't be able to happen. What I do think is Republicans have to understand that the 2026 midterms is an all hands on deck moment.
Well, there's some concerns from members on Capitol Hill that Republicans will perform poorly. Early elections that have been taking place around the country have shown that Republicans have been underperforming and have been doing so significantly, even in areas that are Republican strongholds. Does this demonstration today and the sort of elections that we've seen over the past couple of weeks represent a bit of a warning sign for Republicans in terms of what potentially lies ahead come November?
Yeah, I do think it is a warning sign. That's why I'm saying that it's an all hands on deck moment. These protests don't concern me as much because most of them are occurring in what I call liberal strongholds. But these special elections are certainly a warning sign where basically Donald Trump and the Republican Party have to get the same people that voted for Trump in 2024 to turn out in the 2026 midterms. That's a lot of younger men and low propensity voters who don't tend to turn out in midterm elections. That's why the Republicans are actually considering holding a midterm convention, which would be the first of its kind.
And as far as next steps, right, we are seeing these large gatherings, these demonstrations from here on out for Republicans. What are the next steps for you all? I know we've talked about Democrats, and can they keep this momentum and movement into the midterm elections, into actual policy change? But from your perspective on the other side of the aisle, what should we be looking out for in the next couple of weeks and months?
Yeah, I think between now and November, the Republicans have to do two things: deliver on Donald Trump's two promises of prosperity, the economy, basically bringing down gas prices once the Iraq conflict ends, and security. What a lot of people don't seem to understand is as much as Democrats hate ICE, the American public agrees with Donald Trump when it comes to deportation of illegal aliens. It's about prosperity and security. And if Republicans can deliver on that, they may be able to hold the House of Representatives in November.
A quick clarification on the issue of ICE. Democrats are not actually calling for the abolishment of ICE. They are calling for policy changes that they say.
That is not.
Let me finish, sir.
When you listen to what
they are calling for policy changes that they say will make it safer for ICE to operate in communities, so that they are not deaths of Americans as the two documented deaths that we had in Minnesota.
Is the same guy who ran ICE under Barack Obama and was given a medal. If you listen to the policy changes that they're pushing for, they're essentially saying let's neuter ICE. This is no different than defund the police. And how did that work out for Democrats?
Well, are these changes necessary? I mean, considering the fact that we've had 2 people die in Minnesota, those deaths have really rocked the country. Given what we've seen take place in Minnesota, doesn't it warrant a review, potential changes that could allow ICE to do its job effectively and make sure that the public is also safe?
Look, it's unfortunate when anyone dies, but let's remember they were interfering with federal operations. And yes, Donald Trump is willing to make changes to ICE, but not do it at a gunpoint when it comes to a federal shutdown. We can have those conversations, but if you read bullet point by bullet point what the Democrats are pushing for, particularly when it comes to judicial warrants versus administrative warrants, you'd never be able to deport anyone. And Joe Biden let in 10 million illegal aliens because he refused to enforce Title 8 of the Immigration Nationality Act that's been on the books for decades. ICE isn't doing anything different than it did under Trump versus Obama. The difference is Donald Trump's in charge and it's being driven by Trump derangement syndrome.
When we talk about kind of the landscape that we're looking at right now, you mentioned this. I mean, people's livelihoods really being affected, trickling down to the airports. You have this partial government shutdown. People are out here. We have seen the images showing up all across the country, upset about the immigration tactics, the cost of living, federal layoffs, the war in Iran. From a other side of the aisle here, in Republican perspective, what are some of, in your opinion, President Trump's successes? You have people who are very upset about the way policies and things have gone over the last year or so. So what do you all consider, and Trump supporters consider, as part of his successes right now?
11 months of no illegal immigrants being let into the country through the border. The fact that we actually had the lowest gas prices in 5 years. He's actually stabilized inflation. He's delivering on what I was talking about, prosperity and security. But I think the key here is to wrap up the Iran conflict as quickly as possible, because that is going to lead to lower oil prices, which will create more affordable living. Remember, it was Joe Biden that drove up the inflation, and it's Donald Trump who's fixing the problem.
We're getting estimates from Congress and from the federal government that inflation could be as much as 4% this year. One of the big issues that we heard on the campaign trail in the last cycle was this issue of affordability. Groceries are up, gas is up, unemployment is up. Tariffs are also creating a burden on small businesses and large businesses alike. Help me out here. When we talk about sort of the wins of the Republican Party, people first want to make sure that they can put food on the table, keep a roof over their head, and be able to have a job to go to. With everything that we're seeing right now, a lot of Americans are a bit concerned about what the Republican Party is doing, how they're impacting the economy, and how, for many, they say the Republican Party is making it a lot more difficult for them to take care of their families and to do well.
Well, I think that they seem to forget what happened before Donald Trump came into office. Obviously, I think a key thing to make things more affordable was to wrap up the Iran conflict. But oil and gas is still cheaper under Donald Trump, and inflation is far lower under Donald Trump. In fact, he stabilized it under 3%. I mean, we were as high as at 9% at one point under Joe Biden. I do agree with you. It's about the perception of affordability, and that is why gas prices have to return to pre-conflict Iran conflict levels by Memorial Day. And if you do that, then things will become more affordable. Remember, everything in our economy, goods and services, touches oil and natural gas. And the cheaper oil and natural gas is, the more affordable things are for the American people. And frankly, it's Donald Trump who's actually producing more oil and gas than we've ever had in American history. So he's on the right path. He just needs to speed it up.
Well, I mean, you're talking about oil and gas, but that's not the only indicator when we think about a healthy economy. Tariffs also play a role in that as well. Businesses large and small around this country have been fighting back against the Trump administration and their tariff policies. The Supreme Court has also weighed on the issue as well. People want to see it rolled back. The courts are getting involved. People are filing lawsuits by the thousands against the Trump administration. Yet these tariffs remain, and they are having an adverse impact on people at the grocery store, because the higher those tariffs are, the more it costs for goods and services at home.
Two things about the tariffs. In the first term, when Trump put down tariffs against China, it was amazing the Biden administration kept them in place. And I promise you, two people that are holding these No Kings rallies in Minneapolis, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, would certainly support the tariffs, because you're protecting the American worker. You're trying to onshore jobs. And yes, the Supreme Court did knock down some of his tariffs. They didn't say you couldn't do the tariffs. You just cannot do it through this mechanism. So let's remember that the tariffs are about protecting the American worker and bringing jobs back to America, rather than just cheap consumer goods for the rest of the world. Remember, we have tariffs because China is trying to destroy America economically.
All right, well, give me the math here. How do you square that tariffs help secure jobs when businesses are having to pay for tariffs? It is costing them more, trickling down to consumers. They are concerned about the impact that this is having on their business, because it's directly cutting to their profits that they need to fund and support jobs. Square that math up for me.
That's very simple. It's about basically onshoring jobs by helping the American worker. We've been losing jobs left, right, and center in the private sector to China and the rest of the world. And the tariffs were a one-time thing. Remember, the stock market went bonkers the first time he set down the tariffs this term, and all of a sudden they adjusted. What we're seeing with the economy has more to do with the war in Iran than it does with tariffs right now. And that's the entire point. It was a one-time price hit. And it continues that way because we see it in stabilizing inflation. Everything economically is far stronger under Donald Trump than it was the previous 4 years.
And I think from what we've heard and what Larry just mentioned, I mean, we have heard these promises on the campaign trail. And I would like to get kind of a clear answer from you as to how that is all justified with the things that we are seeing right now, with making it cheaper to live. That was the promise, right? And that is the complete opposite of what we are seeing right now for many Americans who voted for President Trump and who did not vote for President Trump. So what are the next steps so that we can see some kind of... Well, let me finish. What are the next steps here that we can see to get to that point where people can feel like that promise was fulfilled?
Well, they're going to see it on tax day on April 15th when they actually get sizable returns back from the federal government. And essentially, we've stabilized inflation. So remember, once prices go up, they never come down. They can only be stabilized. And the way that we're running oil and natural gas in particular is what is going to bring about that affordability. I'm telling you, the only wrench in the problem right now is this conflict in Iran. And what the president is saying is, look, give me 50 days of pain and we're going to have 50 years of economic success in America, because essentially Iran won't be holding the rest of the world hostage.
And you mentioned the war in Iran here, saying that we need to wrap it up quickly, but we are kind of getting different stories here. That it was only going to be a few weeks, and now it's really an unclear timeline, potentially boots on the ground. Where do we stand with all of this, and kind of break that down for us?
We are only 28 days into it. So you said a few weeks. We seem to still be on a few weeks. There are no boots on the ground. And essentially, Donald Trump is not starting a war. He's ending a war that began 47 years ago when Iran basically took over the U.S. embassy. It's been killing U.S. service members in the Middle East for decades. I mean, he's not starting a war. He's ending a war. And I think that a lot of people in America are not privy to that, thanks to legacy media, glossing over and trying to make it look bad for what Donald Trump is doing. He's been the peace president. He's ended 8 conflicts, and this will be the 9th.
So where is the peace in this? Because now, because of the war that we've engaged in, along with Israel against Iran, we have seen Iran retaliate against its neighbors in the UAE, causing economic disruption in that part of the world as well. Where is the peace? Where is the stability?
It's amazing you bring that up, because UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman are all agreeing with the United States and Israel. That's kind of amazing when you think about it. Iran has no allies. In fact, you even have the Russians saying that Iran needs to find a diplomatic solution to end it. And the fact that Pakistan, which is controlled by China, is basically trying to mediate tells you that Russia and China want Iran to stop it too.
Well, there's some really concerns about this war, primarily because of the Americans that we've lost up until this point. There's a concern that with additional Americans there, that we will lose even more lives. And this war is becoming increasingly unpopular for the administration, that potentially could have blowbacks when we think about the midterm elections coming up in November.
Well, look, nobody ever wants to see any American service member die. But I will say in the 4 weeks that we've been in Iran, this has been the most efficient, dominating air power campaign in the history of the United States. And I'm like you, I want to see it wrap up as soon as possible. So I think we're in agreement that it needs to end as soon as possible. But we are where we are at the moment.
President Trump has real concerns that he could potentially lose the House and the Senate in November. Republicans have sort of started at least planning for that. What do you want to see from this administration? What do you want to see from the president moving forward after today and these demonstrations?
Deliver on what I was talking about originally, which he's delivered on security. I mean, we have the lowest murder rate since 1900 in American history. We have the most secure border in American history. We're doing well on the security front. What we need to see a little bit more of is the economic pickup and prosperity, because, again, we can argue numbers all day long, guys, but it's how the American voter feels when they go into the voting booth in November. And what I would say is, if I'm Donald Trump, I'd make the real point in this. Why would you turn the keys back to the car of Congress over to the very people that put you in this situation? That is going to be the key question in November. And if anyone can drive that home, it would be Donald Trump.
And Ford, before we let you go, I just want to ask you, when we talk about the protests happening today, what is the message How are Republicans receiving that message of millions of people coming out across the country and sharing their concerns? How is that being received on the other side of the aisle?
Well, I think what happens is what you're seeing is how polarized the country is. Because when I look at these protests, I look at them nothing more than Trump derangement syndrome therapy sessions. At the same time, though, that has to worry me come November because I have to make sure in midterm elections it's base versus base. If I'm a Republican, I have to make sure that the base of my party is fired up as the Democrats. Because what these protests show me is I've got millions of pissed off Democrats, and you better counter them at the ballot box or you're going to lose the United States House of Representatives. You're not going to lose the United States Senate.
All right. Well, the demonstrators are fired up, and so is Ford O'Connell. We appreciate you being here with us, sir. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Have a good day, okay?
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Take care.
You.